Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Despite the success of our reforms to date to douse the dumpster fire, the burned-out bin is sitting in front of a building that hasn't been renovated in 50 years.
ICBC overhaul. But will the changes save you money? Also,
we have identified 2 new presumptive positive cases.
As BC confirms more cases of coronavirus.
They just told us that we're boarding now.
The plane bringing Canadians home from China makes its way to Vancouver. And
imagine being asleep and somebody taking it from you.
her diamond stolen right off her finger at a Vancouver nursing home.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. It's the biggest repair job in ICBC's history, a major fix of the financially damaged insurer itself.
The NDP government claims a new enhanced care system will cut your premiums by 20%, maybe by as much as $400 a year.
As Rafferty Baker reports, it's also a plan that's kicking lawyers to the curb.
The best way forward was to look at the largest cost driver at the corporation, and that largest cost driver was legal costs.
The government says this year, legal fees at ICBC amounted to $700 million. And under the proposed system, most cases will be taken out of the courts.
The province says premiums will go down by 20%, an average of $400 per driver. Those who buy optional third-party coverage will see the biggest savings, and the government says benefits will go way up.
Care and treatment benefits will be 24 times higher, up at least $7.5 million. Wage loss coverage will be 60% higher than today. And there will be new benefits for students and caregivers to replace lump sum settlements awarded through lawsuits.
Fault matters. Still, it's not, you can't run into someone without consequences. Your rates will go up. If you are found criminally responsible or criminally negligent, you can be sued. So we're not taking the opportunity for claimants to sue. We're saying that in most instances, let's provide the care first. And this
lawyers certainly stand to lose under the new plan. Rather than using the courts, claimants will have to find recourse through the Civil Resolution Tribunal, the BC Ombudsperson, or a new ICBC Fairness Officer, yet to be appointed.
The narrative that the government wants is that it's legal costs that are driving the lack of financial viability at ICBC, when it's the way ICBC is treating British Columbians. If they were treated fairly, they wouldn't need lawyers.
The system is based on that used in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. It still needs to pass the legislature and wouldn't come into effect before May of next year.
And this looks like a government that is lurching from one solution to another.
It's an overhaul that could very well end up in the courts if it's challenged.
This will be challenged. I expect the components of it will be challenged on any number of constitutional arguments, but I can also tell you that this is a system that's in place and has been operating for many years in other provinces, has been challenged in those provinces and has withstood those challenges. And
it's a major change, but the government says major change is needed to fix the corporation that's been losing billions of dollars. And it says accident victims and ratepayers stand to benefit. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
And more developments today in an ongoing Metro Vancouver turf war. The Vancouver Taxi Association has lost its latest attempt to block ride-hailing. The association claimed ride-hailing companies like Uber and Lyft cause irreparable harm to business, but a BC Supreme Court hasn't agreed, describing the evidence provided as scant at best. The association says it is surprised by the decision.
You know, we're not just standing here saying no to Uber and no to Lyft. We're not saying that. We're saying bring it on fairly. Just bring it on equal for us so that we stand a chance.
Bauer says until there is a fair balance between ride-hailing companies and taxis, the association will continue to fight, starting with a judicial review of the Passenger Transportation Board's approval of Uber and Lyft, where the court will evaluate the decision and decide whether or not it was fair. Meanwhile, Lyft says it is pleased with the decision. It remains invested in the community and will continue conversations with the government as it considers ride-sharing regulations in the region.
2 more cases of presumptive coronavirus have been confirmed today in BC.
This brings the total in our province to 4 people infected, and around the world, 31,000 reported cases, 636 deaths.
CBC's Megan Batchelor is live at Vancouver International Airport tonight. Megan, first of all, what can you tell us about these 2 new local cases?
So, Mike, Anita, these 2 new cases are a man and a woman in their 30s. They recently traveled to Wuhan City, and in fact, they had been visiting someone in Vancouver, and that was that earlier presumptive case that we saw earlier this week. On Tuesday, a woman in her 50s who has also been determined to have a presumptive case of coronavirus. Officials say that they did extensive testing on these 2, and here's how they reached the conclusion that it was one of these 2 that was the source for that original case earlier this week. Take a listen.
Having done the epidemiology and the investigation within that household, one of these individuals is very likely, and we're quite confident, is the source for the case that we announced on Tuesday here in British Columbia.
And so these 2 cases, along with that earlier case earlier this week, is now in front of the microbiology lab in Winnipeg, where there will be further testing that will be done. And once that comes back as positive, we can say that these are definitively positive for coronavirus. And like the earlier test, these 2 new cases are in home isolation. And so it is important to stress here that we have the 3 presumptive cases, 1 confirmed case, but nobody is recovering in hospital at this point, Mike and Anita.
Okay, Megan, and you are at the airport for a reason. It's because the plane carrying Canadians back from China is set to arrive just a few hours from now. What happens if a passenger on that flight is sick and needs medical attention?
Yeah, that's right. Just under 2 hours, in fact, that flight is going to land from China. And the plan is for the plane to land and refuel and carry on to CFB Trenton. But in that event that there is someone on board that plane or multiple people on board that plane that need medical attention, that have gotten any sort of symptoms of the coronavirus, officials here are prepared to take that person or people off of the plane and take them to a nearby medical facility. And this is one of 2 planes that YVR is preparing to have land at it later on today. We know that there's an American charter plane that will be landing around 3 o'clock this morning. It just took off in the last hour or so from China. So the Canadian charter plane has 176 people on board. The American plane has 50 or so additional Canadians that will get off of the plane here and board a government charter plane and also go on to CFB Trenton. The CBC's Ashley Burke now reporting on how those Canadians are feeling finally getting on board those planes.
They just told us that we're boarding now.
The uncertainty is over.
Super relieved for this last-minute miracle.
Megan Millward was afraid her husband, a permanent resident, would not be allowed on the plane with her and their 2 children. But by stroke of luck, he was.
Because we came in the wrong door of the airport, if we had come in the proper departure level door, they would have barred him entry because his name was not on the list at that point. But we parked the car in another parking lot and came in on the wrong floor. And so
at this point, Canadian officials pushed Beijing to let him on board. And he's not the only one.
We are waiting in front of the boarding gate.
At one point, Kai Wong was told his 78-year-old mother couldn't leave China. She's a permanent resident, he's a Canadian citizen. In the end, both were allowed on the U.S. plane.
We're so excited to get here.
But for some, just getting there was an ordeal.
It's raining hard. You can see it's pretty deserted.
Last night, we spoke to an Ottawa family of 3.
Hello. Hello.
Stuck at the final checkpoint for 24 hours. CBC News agreed to withhold their names as they fear for their family's safety.
This has been rather traumatic and very exhausting.
At the airport today, he's worried about getting sick.
They're handling everyone's immigration document, everyone's luggage, and searching everyone. And they have full hazmat suits on. But, you know, we are just dressed normally, and we had to take off our face masks multiple times.
Officials say if anyone becomes ill during the flight, they'll be isolated from other passengers. But Millward's already looking further ahead.
We're looking forward to getting through the long flight in the 2 weeks and then getting back to life as usual in Montreal.
Those 2 weeks she's talking about will be spent under quarantine, but at least they'll be together. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
And so between the Canadian charter plane and the American charter plane that will be arriving here at YVR tonight, Canadian officials say that represents 2/3 of the Canadians that want to leave China. And so they are already arranging for another plane to go to China and return to Canada next week. Mike, Anita?
Megan Batchelor reporting live at Vancouver International Airport tonight. Thanks, Megan.
2 pleasure cruises have turned into nightmares. One anchored off the coast of Japan, the other moored in Hong Kong. The passengers on board all quarantined because of coronavirus.
And we're learning tonight that the number of sick people on board has soared. Tanya Fletcher spoke to a Vancouver resident who is hunkering down in her cramped quarters, hoping for the best.
The room is not big because it's quite small.
Vancouver's Jennifer Lee is one of the lucky ones. She's got a balcony so close to port, the one side now lined with media.
And then there's a whole bunch of reporters there, can you see?
The other, a holding area for emergency responders.
Yeah, and also the helicopters going around, like a lot of helicopters, and those are ambulance.
It's only day 3 of 14 under lockdown aboard the Diamond Princess, and already anxiety is building.
We are very worried, even though we are very healthy now, and we felt that we should leave the boat as soon as possible.
But here they'll stay, this intercom a lifeline.
So I have some additional good news to share for all guests on board.
Good news is hard to come by. Passengers claim the communication is limited, the information slow. Some sliding notes under their door, this one pleading for a bar of soap to do laundry in the sink. Outside, crews offloaded another group of sick passengers, a total of 61 now infected with coronavirus, at least 2 of them Canadian. Thousands of kilometers away, another cruise ship under quarantine, this one off Hong Kong. At least 30 of the thousands of those people trapped aboard the World Dream are from Canada.
This situation is really unique.
This travel agent says for many passengers, the situation could grow drastically worse.
Normally it would be senior clients on this kind of cruise. If they've got medical conditions, if they're running out of meds, then that might be a concern.
Concerns constantly weighing on those back aboard the Diamond Princess.
We still have 12 more days, so 12 more days seems like a long time.
Canadian Roger Maniscalco and his wife Carrie reflect on the happier parts of their trip while trying to focus on the positive. Their only human contact now, the suited up staff who bring food to their door.
They have masks and gloves on, so it's actually quite safe. It's a feeling of being quite safe right now.
Continuing to find comfort any way they can. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
She says it was stolen from her hand as she slept in her Vancouver nursing home.
A 97-year-old woman and her family are now calling for change after someone allegedly stole the diamond from her wedding ring.
As Eric Rankin from the CBC Vancouver Impact team tells us, they say management at the care home has been dismissive of their concerns.
The sparkle is gone quite literally from Mary Wong's life. The 97-year-old had to give up most of her belongings 3 months ago when she moved into Vancouver's Arbutus Long-Term Care Centre. But she held on to her most cherished possession, the .65 carat diamond engagement ring her late husband bought her in 1943. Now the centerpiece diamond, worth an estimated $3,400, has vanished.
You sleepy today?
I'm always sleepy.
Mary and her 63-year-old daughter Janice are convinced the vintage diamond was stolen in the middle of January, plucked from the ring as Mary was in a deep sleep.
Imagine being asleep and somebody taking it from you. It's scary.
I saw her hand and I saw this dark cavity where the sparkle of the diamond would be. And I was immediately shocked.
And this, they say, is how it was done. They believe someone had spotted the diamond ring. This one's a fake. And on the night of January 14th, entered Mary's room with a pair of side cutter pliers. Rather than try to slide the ring over her arthritic fingers and risk a missing ring being quickly discovered, they took the side cutters and slid it underneath the diamond, popping the diamond out, and walked away with a tiny treasure.
It's a brutal way of removing a diamond.
This jeweler examined the damaged ring and says he's certain a crime was committed because these indentations show a tool was used. The ring wasn't just jammed in a drawer.
No one would lose a diamond out of their ring this way if the claws were just broken or the claws were worn out.
But Janice Wong says when she told Arbutus Management about the missing diamond, she was told there was no video surveillance there, despite the fact the home operator, Rivera, had a series of jewelry thefts at a Winnipeg nursing home just last April.
It felt like they were priming me for the fact that there was a limited amount that they would do or could do to investigate.
Contacted by CBC News, Rivera says it is taking the missing diamond seriously. This is an isolated and unusual incident. Rivera is conducting an internal investigation, plus cooperating with investigations by Vancouver Police and Vancouver Coastal Health. BC's seniors advocate says while residents in long-term care are often told, don't keep valuables, that's not reasonable.
It would be devastating for some people to have to take their wedding band off or their engagement band off.
Mary Wong knows there's little chance her diamond will be found, but she wants the thief caught.
Well, I wouldn't mind them finding the person responsible because I wouldn't want them doing to somebody else again.
Eric Rankin, CBC News, Vancouver.
2 men have been found guilty under the Motor Vehicle Act in the death of a teenage Brazilian exchange student in Burnaby. Fernanda Giroto was 15 when she was hit at a notorious Burnaby crosswalk 2 years ago. Today, Paul Oliver Wong and Kai Man Chu have been found guilty of driving without due care and detention. Other charges, including failing to yield to a pedestrian, were tossed out. The sentence could include a fine and possibly a driving prohibition. The pair is due back in court next week.
Half a dozen people have been arrested at a camp in northern BC as RCMP began enforcing a court order.
Officers moved in just before dawn on people blocking construction of the Coastal GasLink pipeline.
The area is a key component of the project that runs across the province to an export terminal at Kitimat. While the pipeline has the support of 5 of 6 Wet'suwet'en First Nations band councils, hereditary chiefs do not approve. Laura Lynch has more on today's showdown.
The arrest started before dawn. In all, RCMP took 6 people into custody and dismantled the camp. Land defenders, as they call themselves, have been blocking access to the site for months. Several kilometers further away, police set up their own blockade to screen anyone else wanting to go in, including Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs.
By our law, you cannot stop us. We are peaceful people, but we do have a right to be on our territory. What is your answer?
Police did allow them through, but stopped them short of any construction vehicles. The chiefs have been hoping to halt construction of a $6 billion pipeline meant to carry liquefied natural gas to port on the BC coast, a project supported by many elected band councils and the province. Talks between the chiefs and the province broke down earlier this week.
It's not the outcome we had hoped for or have been working toward. We are continuing to be hopeful that there will be a peaceful resolution, and our dialogue with the Wet'suwet'en and other people in the community will continue.
So far, though, actions are replacing words. Protests against the arrest popped up in Vancouver, Victoria, and near Trenton, Ontario, blocking trains and access to a port.
Orders and injunctions from the Supreme Court of British Columbia are not optional invitations or suggestions for the parties and the police. Instead, they are mandatory directions from the court. Police are not at liberty to choose which law to follow.
Still, images like these are unlikely to quell criticism from First Nations groups who support the hereditary chiefs and oppose the project. Laura Lynch, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, time for our first check of the forecast. Brett Soderholm is here now. Kind of a yucky day again today. But, you know, I walked by your desk earlier. I didn't even know if you were around. And I saw the 5-day forecast. And there were these strange...
Oh, no.
Orange...
You already saw it?
I did. These orange something I haven't seen.
Well, before you get started, Brett, I thought he was going to talk about how there was a pink umbrella near your desk. It wasn't yours, and he took it out, and he was walking around with this great pink umbrella.
I did.
Always good to keep one of those handy, and yes, you will definitely need to have something like that for the next 2 days, but Mike is absolutely right. There is going to be a significant pattern change coming by the weekend, so this is going to be some good news, but I do want to walk you through some things that we need to be dealing with. First, you can see this rain falling not so much over the lower mainland, but notice how it's falling much closer to Seattle along the I-5 corridor. We had our atmospheric rivers going through last week and certainly through many parts of January. Well, now it's Washington's turn. So I want to show you what it looked like actually just east of Seattle. This was some impressive flooding that was going on not only today, but it started a little bit earlier this week. Issaquah would be the area, so just east of Seattle, making it actually quite difficult for people to get out of their cars and obviously not really going anywhere fast when the water is that high. Now back to us here, one thing we do need to worry about, it is going to be a little bit gusty tomorrow as well, and we are expecting some rainfall, so that is definitely something to keep in mind. But if you are traveling into the interior, we still have snowfall warnings anywhere between Hope and Merritt, and as well Hope to Princeton. So when I come back, I'll share that good news with you.
Can't wait. Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
Quick reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. That free app is also where you can find other CBC programs.
CBC Vancouver, also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
So what will life be like for those Canadians being quarantined in Trenton, Ontario? And how are residents there reacting to their guests? That story coming next.
Thanks so much for joining us on our live stream, where we are ad-free during the commercial break.
Well, on this Throwback Thursday, a somber look into the sacrifice of a beloved Vancouver police dog.
Nitro died while helping to catch escaping suspects, sparking an outpouring of appreciation and remembrance. We were there for his funeral service 13 years ago today.
One by one, they paid tribute to Officer 9755, a veteran of the Vancouver Police Department killed in the line of duty.
We lost one of our own.
That dedicated member was Nitro, an 8.5-year-old German Shepherd, a police service dog specializing in suspect apprehension.
Nitro was born to be a service dog. He displayed the traits we search for in a police dog in his daily play.
Less than 2 weeks ago, Nitro and his handler, Constable Howard Rudder, were pursuing a stolen car in East Vancouver. Not long into the chase, the suspects ditched the vehicle near a rail line and tried to escape on foot.
One guy ended up making an abrupt turn and jumped up onto a box car. And this is when Nitro ended up grabbing a hold of him by the leg. Unfortunately, the unthinkable happened and the train moved. And Nitro was swept underneath the train.
The suspects were later arrested, but this would be Nitro's last catch. He died at the scene. The VPD says public support for the fallen dog has been overwhelming.
They've been sending through email. I mean, in our online condolence book on our website, we've gotten somewhere up towards, I understand, over 2,000 hits alone, and this is just over the last 4 days.
It's also controversial. A public battle emerged over all the attention placed on Nitro's death. After all, some say he was only a dog.
It's not just a dog, it's us. I mean, there's dogs, and then there's dogs that do various types of jobs for society, CNI dogs, police dogs, search and rescue dogs, and they're worth their weight in gold.
That sentiment brought hundreds to Nitro's memorial. More than 400 police officers from across Canada and the U.S. came to pay their respects.
I mean, it's bad when you lose an officer, but it's difficult to express what it's like to lose your partner and your best friend.
Nitro was 6 months shy of retirement. Melanie Nagy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Big story at the time. Very sad.
I remember that story. Yeah, very sad, but great dog. Nitro, 13 years ago today. Hard to believe.
Wow. All right, stick with us, and we'll be back with more on the coronavirus after this break. A flight from Wuhan, China, carrying Canadians back to Canada is expected to touch down at around 8 p.m. at YVR. About 170 passengers are on board.
And after a short stopover in Vancouver to fuel up, they will fly on to CFB Trenton, Ontario, where the passengers will be quarantined for 2 weeks. The CBC's Ellen Morrow has more on how the local community feels about having a quarantine facility in its midst.
This is downtown Trenton, about a 10-minute drive from the military base where the evacuees from Wuhan will be quarantined for 14 days after arriving. They'll be kept in relative isolation on the base. They, of course, will not be walking around downtown. Now, Trenton is very much a military town. The base is a huge part of this city's identity, and people here are used to it being involved in important missions for the country, and this coronavirus evacuation is really no different. People we've been speaking to in the town today are proud that the base is taking part in this mission. Here's what some said this morning at a local diner.
There's very stringent protocols that people follow, and that they adhere to them very, very rigidly. So I wasn't surprised at all that Trenton would be the spot that they would come.
Very proud of Canada, very proud of our Trenton military base, and also our citizens.
Now, there is some level of concern here in Trenton. There are some questions from some people we've spoken to today about why a more remote base wasn't chosen. Also some concern again from some people who didn't want to go on camera about whether someone who was evacuated might need to use a local hospital facility should they fall sick. But authorities here in the area are working to reassure people here in Trenton, the few who do seem to be concerned here, that they are prepared. Here's what the mayor told us.
The concerns that I hear are due to inaccurate information. You know, this situation, people who are coming here are not ill. They're not sick. They've been screened 2 or 3 times, and they'll be screened here when they get off the plane.
Now, again, once the plane arrives in Trenton at CFB Trenton, the evacuees from Wuhan will be kept in quarantine on the base for 14 days. After that period, they'll be free to go home wherever that may be across the country. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Trenton.
They were described as a loving couple with a zest for life.
Daniel Sakat and Faye Kazarani were killed when their Ukrainian Airlines flight was shot down January 8th in Iran. 2 of 176 people killed.
They were making their way back home to Canada when their lives ended. We look back at 2 lives cut short.
They were such lovely people. If everyone close, far, anyone who knew them were just so fond of them, and no one can believe what happened. And I'm doing this for them because they deserve to be acknowledged, and they have so many people who love them all over the world. Both Daniel and Faye were extraordinary people. Daniel was probably one of the smartest people I've ever known in my life, and everyone thinks that way. And it's just such a great loss, not for our family, for everyone in the community, everyone in the world, I would say, because they just had such amazing personalities and so much wisdom that they brought to the world, and they're going to be missed.
Extremely smart. She was a professional. She left her home, she left her country when she was 17 to pursue schooling and work. And despite having all of those accomplishments, or with having all of those accomplishments, you have to get to know her to know that about her, because she was so humble. She was very authentic and really playful. she leaves a really big mark on her community and the people that she interacted with. It's hard to see somebody so great go so soon. I think what she leaves, the legacy that she leaves behind, is her kindness, her acceptance, her listening.
Meal prep kits. They're bought with the hopes they'll take some of the work out of planning dinner. Coming up, what goes into this growing industry? Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
British Columbians shouldn't have to pay more just to fight their own insurance company in court for 2 or 3 years and pay a third or more of their care money to a lawyer in order to get the benefits they're entitled to.
The province is planning a major overhaul to ICBC. It wants to cut lawyers out of the process by implementing what's called an enhanced care system. Lawyers say the system will rob British Columbians of the right to pursue recourse for injuries as they see fit.
We have identified 2 new presumptive positive cases. Both of them are related to the case we announced earlier this week.
2 new presumptive cases of coronavirus have been identified in BC, bringing the total to 4 here. Both patients, a man and woman in their 30s, are connected to the province's 2nd case, which was announced Tuesday. This news comes as that flight bringing home stranded Canadians in Wuhan, China, gets set to land in Vancouver in just a few hours.
To think I'm asleep and somebody's taking it from me and I don't even know it.
A 97-year-old woman is demanding answers. She says her diamond was stolen right off her finger while she was asleep at her Vancouver nursing home. Her husband bought her the ring in 1943. Vancouver police are investigating.
Well, meal kits promise to take the thinking and shopping out of what's for dinner, and it's an industry that's rapidly growing.
Tina Lovegreen is looking at what goes on in the competitive and cutthroat meal kit industry in our latest Shop Talk series.
On the menu tonight, shrimp pad thai. All the ingredients pre-portioned and delivered straight to her door.
It's the convenience, it's the time-saving factor of not having to think, okay, what am I going to do for the week? How am I going to get all those groceries?
Yoga teacher and mother of 2, Alana Lewis orders from a meal kit service 3 to 5 times a week.
And I love efficiency, so I can make the meal, and because I'm not doing all the prep, the kitchen's less messy, and I can almost have the kitchen clean by the time the meal's done, which for me was like bonus points, because then I can just relax with the family after dinner.
The concept is simple. You pick your meals online, they mail out recipes and all the ingredients needed to make them, including condiments and spices, and deliver them straight to your door.
So we have over 200 employees at this point.
Local Vancouver startup Fresh Prep has been in the industry for 5 years and has grown 11,000% in revenue. But competition is fierce. There are over 150 meal kit companies around the world.
Change the way you do dinner with HelloFresh.
And it's only going to get more competitive. In Canada, the industry has roughly tripled in 5 years and is expected to exceed $400 million this year.
It comes down to how fast you can innovate.
But one of the biggest hurdles, meal kits are seen as being expensive. Pricing starts at $10 per serving. But the other criticism is over-packaging, something Fresh Prep is trying to curb by offering reusable cooler bags instead of cardboard.
We started a recycling program where we actually take back and recycle the soft plastics for our customers that can't be recycled at curbside.
But only 25% of customers return the plastic. Lewis is one of the few.
They're doing the recycling for me, so as far as I'm concerned, it couldn't get much easier. Just rinsing the bag and putting it in there is it doesn't seem like a huge task.
And by having the exact portions the recipe calls for, she says she's saving food from going into the garbage. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
I'm a big meal kit user.
Every week.
For the last 3 years, every week. It's changed my life.
Yeah, we did it for a while, then stopped, then started, kind of off and on. But it is hugely popular.
Great service. And we will have more on the Shop Talk series tomorrow, looking at the way the way that people are changing, basically how they get their food.
Yes, the taste buds of Canadians are changing. While traditional supermarkets are closing down, international grocers are thriving.
That's tomorrow. At 6:38 on this Thursday evening, a live look at the Port of Vancouver, North Shore on the other side there. Another dull and drizzly day on the south coast, but there is good news on the horizon. Brett has that in his forecast next.
The weather update is brought to you by The Body Shop that always takes you back to your happy place. BC's favorite, Craftsman Collision, Air Miles, and Bigger Smiles.
All right, Brett, miserable today,
Yeah.
but some sun is maybe in the forecast?
Yes, and I mean, I feel like it has just been a long time. We've had 28 days consecutively now with either rain or snow at the airport, and that hasn't happened since 1966. It's been over 50 years, so if you're feeling sun-starved, hang in there. 24, 48 more hours.
Yeah.
We got this. I'm going to go into all those details now for you. Let's start by taking a look back at this morning. I wouldn't say this is a particularly remarkable morning, mostly because you can't see anything. It was really cloudy and foggy. And then there was even a little bit of rain and drizzle. Yeah, something, of course, that we are no strangers to here in Vancouver. Now, I did mention sun is going to be coming, and I'll get to that in a second, but one thing that I do really want to emphasize is going to be the wind for tomorrow. This might catch a few people off guard. There is going to be a system coming on shore, and by tomorrow afternoon, the winds are going to be blowing pretty strong out of the southwest. So potential ferry crossings could be impacted here between Vancouver Island and the mainland. We could be seeing gusts around Victoria approach that 90-kilometer-an-hour mark, and even here in Vancouver, close to the 60 mark. So something to keep an eye on for about 24 hours for now. Now, in terms of our precipitation, the next few hours are still going to be dry. Much of the overnight tonight, we're not looking at anything. It's going to be tomorrow morning and especially around midday. This is when we're going to be seeing yet another round of showers associated with those winds. So expect a showery kind of rainy day tomorrow. But look at this. By Saturday, about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, there's a little bit of cloud, but I can pretty well guarantee you that is going to be the last of the precipitation that we see for a little while. In terms of our total rainfall amounts throughout that entire time, we've got another 10 to 20, maybe locally 30 millimeters to go. But as everyone has been already anticipating, we have a clearing trend in sight. I'm so happy to share this with you. This is an area of high pressure that is finally going to be acting as a nice protective barrier across the entire province. This means some much needed sunshine is going to be coming full across the province, and it's not really going to be until Monday night. We might get a little blip, but that's going to be about it. So look at this 5-day forecast. Earlier, Mike mentioned he passed by my desk and saw this and was a little bit confused. I certainly am just so happy to share this. Friday, certainly a few showers. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's looking like 4 days in a row that we could potentially be seeing the sun. And if this could go into Wednesday, I think Wednesday might even do it as well. So yeah, hang in there, guys. We're almost there.
Well, don't get carried away, but we love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
A CP rail train moving crude oil jumped the tracks early this morning in south central Saskatchewan. Coming up, how is the federal government responding?
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 1st, join Mike Killeen at the Step Up Challenge. Climb the MNP Tower and help raise funds to improve detection, treatment, and survivorship of prostate cancer. And celebrate International Women's Week with Anita Bathe at West Coast Leafs Equality Breakfast on March 6th. Get ready to be inspired at this one-of-a-kind event. For more, check us out online, cbc.ca/BC.
A Saskatchewan village was evacuated today after a CP Rail freight train jumped the tracks and burst into flames. As Bonnie Allen reports, residents say the crude oil shipments are raising plenty of concerns.
Eyewitnesses were stunned. Just after 6 a.m., a CP train moving crude oil derailed. 12 cars erupted into a huge ball of orange fire that lit up the dark sky.
And I'm like, oh my God, it's another railway disaster on the other side of town this time.
Home care worker Patty Prentice is feeling a bit shaken. She's been nervous about trains moving oil so close to her home ever since another one derailed less than 2 months ago, about 10 kilometers from here. That one was also explosive. A CP train dumped 1.5 million liters of crude oil into the ground and atmosphere.
When we see all these cars, as long as they are full of oil coming through, I think that scares all of us more now because it is getting closer to our small towns.
When you have this happening and twice in 2 months, like that's ridiculous.
This time, thick black smoke forced the evacuation of the village's 80 residents to a neighboring town. CP Rail is paying for meals and putting evacuees in hotels until the safety threat is over.
My husband owns the garage out on right in front of the railroad tracks there, so I mean, kind of scary. We could lose everything out there.
The Transportation Safety Board is still investigating December's derailment, so its cause remains unknown. The investigation of this one has just begun.
Mr. Speaker.
But the federal transport minister, Marc Garneau, isn't waiting to take action.
Very concerned with the derailment of trains that are carrying dangerous goods, and I have therefore decided to put in place, for safety purposes, a ministerial order.
A speed restriction effective midnight Friday. All trains in Canada with 20 or more rail cars containing dangerous goods must travel half the normal speed, at least for the next month. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, near Guernsey, Saskatchewan.
Vitamin supplements are big business. Canadians spend about $3 billion on them every year, even though medical researchers have long questioned their usefulness in healthy people. And now Vicodopia is looking at a new study that adds to the growing evidence that shows taking vitamins during cancer treatment could actually pose a risk, even affect survival.
Ingrid Fauché-Murphy tries to stay as fit as possible. She was diagnosed with breast cancer 7 years ago. As she waited for treatment, Murphy wanted to increase her odds. So she also went to a naturopathic doctor.
And he prescribed various multitude of vitamins, which included A, B, C, D, melatonin, some 20 milligrams melatonin, which is fairly high, and some other supplements like turmeric, which is antioxidant.
It was not a prescription her oncologist approved of. He worried popping vitamins would interfere with chemotherapy, a critical part of cancer treatment.
I thought I was pretty proud of myself that I was being very proactive in all of these vitamins. And he said immediately that I had to stop taking all of them.
This new study supports that advice. It followed 1,100 breast cancer patients in Canada and the U.S. through treatment. 18% took vitamins like A, C, or E. Their risk of the cancer returning was 40% higher.
When I started this study, I really didn't think we'd see anything at all.
Just as surprising to the lead author, even non-antioxidant supplements such as vitamin B12 and iron supplements also carried a similar risk. The findings show only an association, not cause and effect, and it's a small group statistically. Still, concerns over taking vitamins during cancer treatment have been around for a while. But not all patients in the study knew that.
Probably only about half the patients had a conversation with their doctor about use of supplements.
Chemotherapy uses special drugs to destroy cells, both cancerous and normal cells. But antioxidants like vitamins A, C, E, and coenzyme Q10 help repair cell damage, and that can interfere with this process. This cancer doctor says the study deepens the understanding of the potential risks of vitamins.
Patients think that it will boost their immunity when they are on chemotherapy or radiation. We believe they counter the cytotoxicity, or in other words, the benefit, the work, how the chemotherapy and radiation works.
Vitamin supplements can play a role in recovery after cancer treatment. As for Ingrid Fauché-Murphy, her treatment's long over, and she's back to taking her vitamins. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
Senators are hoping to fast-track a bill aimed at ensuring mental health support for jurors traumatized by the details of difficult crimes. The bill revives an earlier initiative in the House of Commons that ran out of time to amend the criminal code.
These experiences stay with you for the rest of your life.
When you face trials like the Victoria Stafford or the Bernardo case, or these cases are much more difficult, but anyone can suffer from PTSD.
As it stands, the criminal code bars former jurors from ever discussing what went on during jury deliberations, even with mental health professionals. And many former jurors report lasting distress from what they hear and see in some trials, with nowhere to turn to address their fears and anxiety. The Senate bill would change that. Senators believe their bill has wide support and could pass through the Senate by spring, with adoption by the Commons this summer.
Prosecutors in Harvey Weinstein's sexual assault trial wrapped up their case today after more than 2 weeks of testimony. Model Lauren Marie Young returned to the witness stand. She claims the former movie mogul assaulted her in a hotel. So far, the court has heard similar accounts from 5 other women. The defense will now start calling their own witnesses. It's not yet clear whether Weinstein himself will take the stand. The criminal charges at this trial are based on 2 allegations: that the former movie mogul raped a woman in 2013 and that he forced oral sex on another woman in 2006.
Sit, roll over, charge your battery. After the break, we'll find out why one construction company in Montreal has gone to the robot dogs. All right, a Canadian construction company is trying something, well, a little different.
It's tracking progress on projects with high-resolution photos taken by a dog.
But as Matt Demores explains, it's not any breed you're used to seeing.
Construction sites can be pretty complicated places. It takes a lot of staff to make sure that everything is going according to plan. But now, workers here have a new helper. And his name is Spot. Good boy. The robot dog is made by Boston Dynamics. It gained internet fame with some viral videos like this. And while this Spot has some moves too, it has some important work to do. Construction company Pomerleau rented 2 of the robot dogs. Spot will walk around taking 360-degree photos of construction sites so that staff and clients can make sure projects are on track.
We're trying to compare on the day-to-day basis the progression of the sites, the safety of the sites, and also to compare with the 3D models that we have.
This is the first time in the world that the Spot robot is used in this context, so in a construction site context.
Spot could also be sent into dangerous or confined spaces, so it's a good thing it can navigate around or over obstacles. And if it ever flips over in the field, Spot can take care of itself. The robot can work autonomously, and it's pretty easy to drive with video game-like controls. They even let me have a spin, although for safety reasons, you're usually supposed to stay a couple of meters back.
I love it. Yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I'm like, yeah, now it's happening.
You know, the future is bright for robotics and construction, in our view, and this is a great first exercise.
Pomerleau will test Spot for 6 months. It'll work on Montreal construction sites, then go on tour to other cities across the country. No doggy bed required. Matt Demores, CBC News, Montreal.
Good point. No doggy bag required.
No, I was about to say I'll take one of those, keep it in the house, and then that shot of the 2 of them walking, a little creepy.
Yeah.
A little scary.
But particularly in construction, not a bad idea.
Why not? I'm sure we will see much more of that. Dogs, cats, birds, robots of all sorts.
Exactly. Okay, we've got coverage coming up, of course, online throughout the evening and on CBC Radio. And Dan is here at 11. The 2 flights from China are currently en route with Canadians on board. The first one expected to arrive in a few hours, and the next one about 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. First one is just refueling here, heading on to Ontario, and the second one dropping about 50 Canadians off here in Vancouver.
And then heading to the U.S. All right, that's it for tonight. Dan's here at 11.
Have a great night. Thanks for watching.